And if it's okay with y'all, I'm going to just stand up and move around a little bit. We want to keep this just as informal as possible and answer your questions, your concerns, hear your comments. And I want to give y'all just a little bit of narrative and feedback and a little bit of information, and then we'll open up the floor to just whatever general discussion and conversation that y'all want to have. And we'll talk about anything that you want to talk about pertaining to this tax hearing or anything else with this small of a group. It'd be very easy to talk about anything about county government that's on your mind or anything you want to comment or question on. One of the things that I wanted to recap with you just briefly is talk a little bit about where things were when I started January 1st of 2017, where we were from a financial standpoint. When I went after the election cycle and I was voted in as the commissioner, you have to go to some training at the University of Georgia, the Carl Vinston Institution of Government, and they put you through a 1-week crash course of everything you need to know in about 5 days of how to be a commissioner. Well, they teach you a lot of good stuff, but they cover about 25% of what you really need to know or what you're going to be dealing with. But it's a great course, but it's still something that they could probably spend a month on. One of the classes was with one of the professors from University of Georgia that does finances and accounting and understanding government finances and all. And he said, you know, when you get back to your local governments, one of the things you want to do is get a hold of your financial audit. And I thought, well, I carry it around with me. I've got it right there in my bag. And he said, when you look at it, you want to look at the net position of your county on your balance sheet. You want to look on your income statement and figure out what your average monthly expenditures are, how much money your county spends a month to operate. Well, right now, county government here in Walker County, we're spending, round numbers, a couple of $1 million a month to run local government. And he said, so once you figure out that number, you want to say, all right, we want 2 to 4 times that number as our net position on our balance sheet to be healthy. So if we're at $2 million a month, that'd be $4 million to much as $8 million is a positive net position. Reached in the bag, pulled out the audit, turned over there in net position. We were a negative $7.5 million. Negative. So we're supposed to be at least at zero or something positive. So, you know, I campaigned a lot about the audit and the budget and the condition of the county. And looking at that, I thought, we take a break here for lunch. I'm going to take this up and show it to him. We had the break, walk up there and say, hey, I want to show you something, man. So he was talking about the net position. He talked about a lot of things. He said, yeah. He said 2 to 4 times your monthly expense. I said, yeah. I said, have you ever seen one negative? He said, no, I've never seen one negative. I said, you want to see one? And he just looked kind of like, is this real? So I handed him the full version of the audit. Pointed it to him. Folks, he had to sit down. He flips back and forth. He looks at my dad. Hey, where are you from? And he said, how'd this happen? I said, I don't think you've got that much time. And he says, I've never seen one negative. Ever. We can have some more Q&A. And he said, can I have this? I said, absolutely. He said, buddy, you got your work cut out for you. He said, you've got to change this. I said, absolutely. So we come in on day one, which I went in on January 1, but the staff came in on January 2nd. I asked Greg McConnell, I said, Greg, how much money we got in the bank? He said, I already knew you was going to ask. I've already looked. We got $800,000. Well, that's a lot of money, folks. $800,000 is a lot of money. But I knew that wasn't nowhere near enough because payroll for 1 month's over $1 million. So we didn't have enough money to cover payroll for 1 month. Won't know if all the bills would be paid. No, it's all in there on the desk. We got those all into the system. About $3.5 million worth of payables. So by the second week, we put a cash flow sheet together, worked through that, come up, we knew we needed $8 million tax anticipation note, line of credit, in order to just function and survive going forward. Bank of LaFayette was gracious to loan us $4 million. Had 7 other banks tell me no throughout the year. First Volunteer Bank called back and said, well, let's talk about it some more. Met with them. They graciously loaned us the other $4 million. We ended up having to utilize $7.5 million of that. So from the start of January, we were in a negative position on our balance sheet. We was in a negative position from a cash flow standpoint as well. This year, well, let me slow down a minute. We paid those tax anticipations off. They have to be paid off the same year you borrow them. You can't carry them over year to year or you're violating state law. So they had to be paid off by December 31st. We were able to start paying on those back in November. We got them finally all paid off. December 22nd of 2017, I personally walked into both banks, paid those line of credits off, including the interest. We paid round numbers about $147,000 in interest on those line of credits. The prior year, they'd spent, I think, it's about $256,000 in interest on the lines of credits because they were into the secondary market, had a lot more fees and higher interest costs and all. Folks, when you look at $147,000, that's 6 new police cars. And so we have right now currently about the right amount of money coming in to the county government to operate and function and provide what the citizens need. It's just the money is not all going in the right places moving forward because we're trying to correct the things from the past. And so we're trying to get out of this cycle of these tax anticipation notes. So last year we said, hey, we're going to have to do one probably for the next 3 years because a tax anticipation note sounds real fancy and sophisticated, and we get used to saying an acronym called a TAN, tax anticipation, TAN, refer to it as a line of credit. But in reality, just to keep it real simple, it's payday lending for your local government. You're borrowing on future money coming in. Local government gets paid on December the 20th because that's when your property taxes are due. So look at that as payday. So once county government gets paid, then we got till 31st of December to pay back the bank. And we're actually taking money that we should be using to operate on the next year, but we're trying to cover the expenses from the past. And it just kept rolling over and rolling over. So this year, Greg and I was looking at it, doing some cash flow analysis, and it looked like probably about the end of May, 1st of June, we were going to have to do another tax anticipation note. But one of our goals was to reduce that every single year by about $2 million, which is a very aggressive approach to try to reduce that down. And so part of that takes teamwork. I can't do all of this by myself. It takes teamwork. It takes every department leader, it takes every county employee, and especially it takes buy-in and teamwork and communication with all of your elected officials, because they get a large chunk of the budget dollars that go to their departments to run, to provide them what they need to operate. So it takes everybody working together, and you can't have somebody out here going this way and spending and doing and wasting and not adhering to the plan, the master plan that was laid out. You've got to have everybody working together as a team and pulling the wagon the same way. Well, I can honestly and proudly stand here before you today and tell you that has been happening this past year. Everybody has been working together. We've got a great team, got great working relations with our constitutional officers, and they are all doing a fantastic job. And we want to keep that going. We want to keep that momentum going and continue to build on that because everybody is really in sync and working well together. So this year we were able to get past the May without having to borrow. We got into June. I looked up about the 1st of July, and I think we still had a couple of $1 million in the bank. I said, okay, this thing is working. The budget's working. Everybody's working together. We've got good positive cash flow. So at the meeting last week, we went ahead and did the documentation with our 2 lenders to do a tax anticipation note of up to $6 million. Well, we've yet to even have to draw any of that money down yet, but we will in the next few days when we get into September on our next payroll. We will have to start drawing some of that money down but we only have to pay interest on the money that we've actually got in use. So we've got $3 million with Bank of LaFayette as a line of credit, $3 million with First Volunteer Bank as a line of credit, but we've not touched either one of them as of today. But as we start pulling down on those, we will take and pay interest only on the money that we are using. Because sometimes the way banks will set that up, or lenders, is they'll make you take all that up front. But our banks have been good to work with us to let us use that as a line of credit form of a tax anticipation note. So when you look at it, where in 2017, we needed money the first week of January. We had cutoff notices. We had late statements from almost every vendor. The first week of January 2017, we really needed money, and it took us to the second week of January to get organized and get things moving. We've now have changed that process over to better management, better financing, and better budgeting. So now basically you might as well say we're the 1st of September. Folks, that's about a 270-day turnaround going from a negative cash flow position to a positive cash flow position. That is an amazing about turnaround of turning the Titanic that was sinking and taking on water to try to plug all the holes, get everybody working together, moving in the right direction, all adhering to the positive changes and working as a team. So I'm glad none of our constitutional officers are here today, because that way it's easier to brag on them when they're not here. But it has been a pleasure to work with each of them. This year, through some of our budget process, it's still ongoing. I was talking with the sheriff, and I said, let's sit down and really dive deep into your budget this year, because the Sheriff's Department is one of the largest budgets in our system of county government. And so we blocked out on our calendars a 3-hour window to sit down and work on that. In 4.5 hours, we finished. And he brought over 3 of his top administrators that had really dived deep into this. And we spent basically a half a day at the conference table going through every line item. They had made a lot of very good notes and explanations and justifications for everything that they had presented in their budget was very much needed. And I asked the sheriff, I said, Sheriff, have you ever had truly a fully funded budget in your 20 plus, I think he's going 22-year history as a sheriff? And he says, no, not really. I've never really had a fully funded budget to be able to do everything we need to do. And I said, well, I don't see that this is going to be that year that it's fully funded, but we are going to work hard together and try to find savings and synergies and other things from other places to get more funding for the Sheriff's Department, because, folks, crime's not getting any better in our country, and our policemen and women are on the firing lines, and the drive-by shootings and these things that's happening, and the crime that's coming over the Tennessee border is real. And when you look at 25 years ago, their call volume, just the 911 center, was 25,000 calls. Now they're answering about 50,000 calls a year. So that's a tremendous amount of increase in call volume. And we've got to protect our citizens. So we work very well together in pulling things together. So we have been able this year to increase the sheriff's budget and give that department the largest budget they've ever had in history. But it's taken everything working together to make that happen. And basically, we, on this tax information that went out, those of you that live in the unincorporated area, those of you that live in the county, your taxes are not changing, not one penny. It's 0 across the board. So that's effective governing for you as the citizens to be able to take several $100,000 new dollars that we had been spending in places elsewhere before in interest and debt reduction and things, and we're taking that now, those dollars are freed up, and we're moving that to better serve the citizens and paying cash for things. Over the last administration, the last 3 years, when they buy police cars, they would lease them. And I like what Dave Ramsey says, that's called fleecing. You're fleecing, you're being fleeced. Because what they were doing, a governing body, Commissioner's office was taking and leasing cars over a 5-year time period. Well, folks, a lot of these cars, they know when they put them in service, they're not going to be rolling in 5 years. The amount of miles, the abuse, these type of things, a lot of these cars, about 4 years or so, they're not in service anymore after that. And so we were financing cars as a county that's not even on the road anymore. And I think when I took office, it was like 25 cars or something like that that were still in leases that we're still paying on. And I bet if we went and pulled an inventory, there's a good number of those that are not even rolling. They've been wrecked or out of service or whatever. So that's part of the cycle we got to break. We got to quit wasting money on that interest. So fortunately this year, we got one of those lease payments freed up. And it has allowed us to just roll that into the budget for this year for the sheriff now to be able to buy somewhere between 9 or 10 new cars that we're going to pay cash for. We're not going to finance them, we're going to lease them, we're paying cash for them. We were able to make a budget adjustment in this year's budget we're currently working on, some additional revenue that came in that allowed him to buy about 11 new police cars, and just come in a couple of weeks ago that they're getting the equipment and all on, probably have been serviced over the next couple of weeks or so. Because that's one of the critical infrastructure things that you got to have. You got to have your police officers in the right equipment. You can't have them in cars that's got 300,000 and 400,000 miles on them that break down on the way to the call. Another very important thing is protecting them for when the bad guys show up, our officers can respond. And one of the key things for them is their sidearm, their pistol. And so, stop and think, can you see some of these things that fortunately we've just seen on TV from a distance? It's not really happened here, where you see these bad people come in and you have these mass shootings and type things, and your local police departments have got to respond. And they end up into these firefights. Well, one of the key things is that your whole community of police services are all on the same page with their weapons. You don't need some departments carrying one type of weapon and one type of ammunition, and the state patrol carrying something else, and your local city carrying something else. Because if they get pinned down and they're side by side, hey, I need a clip. That clip won't fit my gun. Now you got a problem. And so the state has just recently changed, and they're going back or going to a 9mm weapon. What everybody had been carrying is 40mm. So we got that into the budget so we can get our team on the same page as the state, and everybody being issued new firearms, new ammunition. So for the unfortunate thing to happen for our guys to get pinned down, if he's pinned down next to a state trooper, they're on the same page. And I know it's not pleasant things to talk about, but it's things in this type of setting we need to talk about and make sure we're prepared for. So that is just a little glimpse of some of the things when we were meeting with the sheriff's office. These are some of the things we were talking about in greater detail than what I just explained here to you. So I can't emphasize enough, those needs are real, and as we continue to pay this debt and stuff down, we will have more dollars freed up to be able to handle and do these type of things to take care of our first responders. One of the other things that is very important to us is our fire department, our first responders. They are probably going to answer somewhere close to 6,000 calls this year. And that's up dramatically. And one reason for that is the way we're better positioning our firefighters. Where they used to have 3 full-time stations, have 4 men per station, the chief and his staff and his leadership team got to looking at the data, and they realized that 90% of the calls that they answer in today's world has nothing to do with a fire. No fire, but the fire department's sent out. So a lot of it is vehicle accidents, breathing problems, people that's passed out, medical type related things, accidents and things. And so the first responders need to respond, because what happens a lot of times when the ambulance gets there, if it's a big guy like me, and you got 2 ambulance people, they're like, okay, how are we going to get this guy in the ambulance? So then they have to call for lift assist. They have to call for backup. And then that's another 15 or 20 minutes. And so they've changed this in the CAD system at 911, where anything that's a life-critical safety issue, our guys are rolling. And in many cases, because we're better positioned and more units, our guys are getting there first to start that first aid treatment, that oxygen, those life-critical safeties to try to save lives. And so we'll have more information as we get through this year and into next year to have the actual data for a full year to show the citizens how this is working and how critical this is, and that your public health fee is actually covering the cost. And these guys, the volume has gone way up. One of the things we did this past year too was finally negotiating the Erlanger agreement to get them to settle this out of court. So when I took over, there was a pending federal lawsuit, and while I was in office, the federal court judge had passed down a summary judgment against our county. So we had a federal court summary judgment for basically $10 million to Erlanger. They had the ability to go to court and get another filing with the judge, if the judge would go along with it, where they could take a document, get a court order for that amount of money, and come tax day, take that into the tax commissioner's office, and say, we want our money, we've got a court order. And that was a real fear that we faced in our county. So while I was in office trying to negotiate this, they filed 2 more lawsuits against us, trying to scare us even more. So we never quit communicating, we never quit having dialogue with them, we never kept working the back channels of influence in the community to try to get them back to the table. And so when we put in last year this time, the public health facility fee for Erlanger, we didn't have a deal cut with Erlanger. We took a leap of faith that, hey, here's what we can do. We will set up a payment plan for $650,000 a year over a 3-year time period to pay this out and to get this done. And then it was still weeks after that before we actually got a written settlement with them, and we were successful in getting them to accept our offer where we paid no interest on that debt from day one all the way till 3 years out. None of the court costs that had been incurred, and none of the attorney fees that they were racking up, which was, all this was hundreds of thousands of dollars. We got them to waive and forgive every bit of that, accept our payment term to let us pay $650,000 a month, a quarter, $650,000 a quarter. The last payment's a balloon payment that's a little over $900,000, which will not be an issue for us. But I'm pleased to announce to you today, we have successfully made the first 3 quarterly payments. We've paid them $650,000, so that's $1,950,000 that we have paid them. So the revenue's coming in strong. We're on task. We're on course. We've made those payments. We wired that money, and it's a pleasure once a quarter. I get excited about this. When Becky, our clerk, and we go over to the Bank of LaFayette, and we both sign the document to do the wire transfer. And I tell the staff at the bank, all right, 2 down. Go back next quarter. All right, 3 down. You know, we're knocking this out. We're getting this done. So I can stand before you today and tell you without a doubt, after this 2018 tax cycle, after the 2019 tax cycle, that public health facility fee will go completely away. That cost on your tax bill, that separate line item fee, will be 100% gone. Erlanger will be 100% paid. The ordinance that we did and resolution and all that we did to do that last year has already been submitted to the tax assessor's office, tax commissioner's office. It's in our minutes. It's done. There's no additional action that I or my office has to take that will automatically go away. So that's a big number for everybody, because everyone's really having to sacrifice to pay that back. But it was the right thing to do. Being able to pay that back in those large payments allowed us to be able to negotiate hundreds of thousands of dollars in savings of interest, in fees, in court costs, and attorney fees. So we do realize it's a burden to our citizens. We know everyone's had to sacrifice, but we are 100% committed that after that 2019, once you pay your taxes by December 20th, 2019, that is done and in the books. My desire is when we make that last payment, I want to get with the leadership of Erlanger and get our leadership together, and I want to have a public note burning ceremony and say, citizens of Walker County, citizens of Hamilton County, it is finished. This is done, it's settled, everything's back to normal as far as our relationships with Erlanger. So we are very grateful to see this process played out, and I know that y'all will be very grateful when this is done. But to be able to get that all accomplished in a 3-year period, we're going to look back one day and go, wow, that's amazing. That was a God thing. That just doesn't happen for that to be able to be done that quickly. So we're very excited about that. When you look at these notices that we had to put into the paper, folks, this stuff's all very confusing. Terry and Greg have to help me each year here to keep me straight so I understand it. But this is the format and the way that the state lays this out. And if we don't do this just right, if we're missing a paragraph, or what Dade County run into this year, they had to get a special approval because the ad size was too small in the paper. They sent it in on a full sheet of paper, and then the paper had a spacing issue, so they just reduced it down, thought they were helping the county save money, I guess, and it threw all kind of red flags up. So this is very critical that all of this is documented in the way this stuff is stated, that all of this is done this fashion to meet those state guidelines. So I'll start on the last paragraph, which is really the meat of it, because the first part of it talks about the times and dates and all, but it says, this tentative increase will result in a millage rate of 9.838 in the unincorporated area. So the unincorporated area is if you live in the county or you have property in the county. You're outside the city or any city, that's the unincorporated. So it says the millage rate of 9.838. Folks, that's what the rate is today. That's the current rate, and it's not changing. At 9.838, that net millage rate. And 13.33 mills in the incorporated, which is your cities. You know, I don't know why they don't just let us say cities. They make us say incorporated and unincorporated. Well, we're not used to thinking incorporated or incorporated. We're used to talking about, well, you live in the county, you live in the city. So the incorporated is the city. An increase, and then this is where it gets confusing too. Then they kind of, the way they make you word this, it says the mills in the incorporated area, an increase of 0.00 mills in the unincorporated area, and a 0.177 mills in the incorporated. So it talks about unincorporated, then it jumps to incorporated, then you jump back to unincorporated, then back to incorporated. I don't know why they just don't let us put it all in the same line, or two separate lines. Without this tentative tax increase, the millage rate would be no more than 9.827 mills in the unincorporated area and 13.153 mills in the incorporated area. The proposed tax increase for homes with a fair market value of $100,000 is approximately $0.00 in the unincorporated area. So there again, it tells you if you live in the county, in the unincorporated, your taxes are going up zero. And $7.64 in the incorporated area, and the proposed increase for a non-homestead property with a fair market value of $75,000 is approximately 0.00 in the unincorporated and $6.03 in the incorporated. So the reason we have to list those two numbers, Terry helped me on this at the last meeting, is the average value of home in Walker County is $75,000.
No, it's a non-homesteaded property.
Non-homestead property, the average
It's
$75,000. So that's how that number got chosen.
The actual number would be different than that, but the law says you round it to the nearest 25,000.
Okay, so you round to the nearest 25,000. So there's all these little technical rules. So I'm more of a let's keep it simple kind of guy. They make this complicated. So then the other thing that they have us do is this 5-year digest. And so when you look at this digest, you'll see back in 2014, at the very, very bottom, the taxes went up $3.9 million or 54.12%. And then in 2015, they went up another $923,050 or 8.31%. Then in 2016, they were trying to save the election, so they made the decision to do this big rollback, just try to show everybody you're lowering your taxes. All while we're out telling everybody, folks, we got $70 million worth of debt. Why are they cutting the income? You know, it's all in the game. And then last year, we had to increase taxes $2,497,108 or 21.77%. And this year, it's $264,505 or 1.89%. I got with Greg as we were going through these budgets. I said, Greg, we're working real hard. We got everybody on board. Everybody's doing great with their budgets. We don't want to raise the millage at all. We want to keep it the same. We're just not going to change it. He said, that's not possible. He said, because you've got these rollbacks. If you look in there, about halfway up, you see less millage rate rollback, and you've got a rollback percentage or millage number on both the incorporated and unincorporated. And what that is your sales tax, your local option sales tax that's collected, you roll that back. So that's been up a little bit. People are shopping more in Walker County. We've got some additional retail businesses. People are doing more business in Walker County. So you take that additional revenue and it offsets and rolls back on your property taxes. Then you have an insurance tax credit that comes from the state on the October 15th of every year. It basically is a franchise fee to all insurance companies. So all the insurance policies that are sold in the state, they charge a small franchise fee into your premium, and then they remit those funds to the state, and based off of your city and county and all, the state disperses those out October 15th to every county and every city. So you roll that back. So where the difference comes in, the county residents, we get that those rollbacks for the insurance for the county residents. The cities get that same money coming in from the insurance tax credits through the city, and they do their rollback. So that's why these numbers for incorporated and unincorporated are two different numbers, is because of the way the rollbacks have to affect us. So I spent a couple hours on this because Greg was telling me the way it was and we're reality, because he's been doing this for 20 years or so. I was still trying to prove Greg wrong. I'm like, oh, there's got to be a way to keep this thing where it doesn't move. And Greg says it's impossible because you've got these rollbacks that are moving every year. That number's changing every year on your rollback. You never know what it's going to be till it's over. And I thought, there's got to be a way. So I even called a couple of other counties and said, hey, you know, Greg's telling me this, and I know he's got a lot of experience, but I said, I'd love to prove him wrong on this one and not have to change the tax rate at all. And they told me, said, no, your guy, he's 100% spot on. He's telling you like it is. This is the way it's got to be done. Nobody loves it, but it's just the way it's got to be done. And so we tried to basically just capture the growth. We had about, I think it was somewhere around 75 new homes or so built in the county that ended up on the digest, plus some valuations increase. And so if a person lives in the county, the only way their taxes are going to change is if their values went up, if your property values were assessed at a higher rate. And I'm sure there's some in the county that the property assessments went down. But the key thing that we control as the governing body at the commissioner's office is the rate. We're an arm's length apart from the assessor's office and the assessing and evaluation. The state has that set up very deliberately, purposely, and rightfully so, that they operate completely independent from the taxing authority being your local county commission office. And so they go and do assessments, and it's all regulated by the Department of Revenue, by the state, and it's very, very strict guidelines. They have a very good board that oversees that operation, and the state comes in and audits those. The information gets reviewed by the state, so there's a lot of steps and checks and balances in that process. So your local county commissioner's office doesn't have the ability to go, hey, you know, I think that property over there is probably worth $300,000. Y'all have only got it down at $200. Raise it $100. It don't work that way. They've got to go and do an analytical assessment, key the data into the system, and justify the number, whatever it is. And so that functions the same way across the entire state in every county. So we've worked real hard for you this year to better manage the money. We've increased the cash flow by about 270 days. Everybody's working as a team, moving this county forward, and I hope that you're pleased with the outcome. And if you see our other elected officials and our other team members, be sure and tell them that you appreciate what they're doing and how hard they're working. That'll mean a lot to them. So at this time, I'll open up the floor and anything that y'all want to talk about. Yes, sir.
I got a question here. I appreciate what you're doing and the way you're sunlighting all this stuff that's gone on in the past, maybe a little bit undercover. My question is just about what you talked about the Erlanger tax. If Erlanger were to forgive a grassroots effort to ask them to forgive it just because they're the ones who spent the money in the very beginning, would that disappear immediately from our tax bill?
Yes. I mean, we would have to go through some process and procedures. Resolution type thing, but yes, the short answer would be, from a high-level short answer standpoint, if Erlanger came up and forgive that debt and that was settled, those fundings for that fee are all geared around the indebtedness that was caused by trying to save the hospital that the previous administration did. So if that debt was forgiven or went away or someone else paid it on our behalf of our citizens, then we would automatically go back in and go through the steps to take that out.
Great. Thank you.
Good question. All right, anybody else? Yes, sir.
A while back, you were talking about some state funding that was available for road repair. Could you talk about how that's...
Yeah, great. Let's talk about roads a minute. This is something that's very exciting because we're really ramping up for this, and you're going to see a lot of things changing over the next few months with our roads. Thank you very much as citizens of Walker County for passing the T-Splosh last November, because we were in a position, we released a 100-page budget, and there was $0 in there for road improvement or maintaining of our roads and bridges. And so with the T-Splosh passing, that gave us funding to start working on transportation. And those funds are earmarked, they're in a separate account properly that have to be used 100% for transportation. We did not bond any of that. So they voted on that in November. You start collecting it in April of 2018. We started seeing funding coming in at the end of May. Fortunately, the funding is coming in better and stronger than we had projected, which means more people and more business is going on in Walker County. So that's a great thing. What that is doing for us is we had local state road money, what they call, the acronym's called LMIG. We had roughly about $1 million sitting in a grant account at the Bank of LaFayette that we have to put a 30% match with. Well, we didn't have the match, and I wasn't going to borrow it like had been done in the past. The borrowing has to stop. And so we couldn't pave roads. There was a road list for 2017. We couldn't start on any of those roads because I didn't have $300,000 to go with it. And so now we can take our T-Splosh dollars, and those qualify 100% to match our LMIG funds. So now we can start paving roads that was slated in 2016 to be done in 2017. So that is underway. Where we've already started working this week is in Emerald Acres on Diamond Circle. The roads are real bad where they've sunk in, where the sewer lines had settled so much. And so they are up there this week actually cutting the trenches of the asphalt. And they're going to start digging on Tuesday next week to recompact and reshore all that up and put some binder in of asphalt and level everything up, get everything squared up. And we're going to let that set through a couple of rains to make sure we got good compaction. And then we're going to go back in there and pave those roads. And those roads ought to last 25 years in a subdivision. But another thing that we did before we did that is there water and sewer lines in there. So we got with the city of LaFayette on the water, said, hey, y'all want to replace your water lines, now's the time to do it, because when you dig the road up, we'll fix it back. We also had our sewer system, which is on the Walker County Water and Sewer Authority, to go through there. We've got the special equipment and have a trailer camera recording system where we went in there and the team recorded all the sewer lines and videoed those. We've got a little drone that will run in these sewer lines that video records the piping. And so we wanted to make sure we didn't have any breaks or any failures So we're trying to do these type of things on the infrastructure underground to make sure when we go and pave that we've got things in good shape. So we're able to now release those state dollars by matching with our local dollars. Also, on our meeting tonight at 6 o'clock, we will have the bids come in from any of the bidders on a request for proposal to repave Nickajack Road. Nickajack Road over in Flintstone, the state tells us is the third most dangerous county road in the state. And it's on their radar big time. So they said if we would go in and repave the road and fix the rock slide that happened a few years ago and go in and shore up the shoulders, that they would come in next year after it's paved and has to cure, and they would apply a surface traction treatment product onto the road that will allow for better traction. We're also, when we pave it, we're going to be using a different blend of aggregate. It's a 50-50 blend. So we're going to be importing some of the aggregate from some of the mines out of around Middle Georgia. It's a better aggregate to use on mountain roads that will be blended in with the aggregate from here locally. And so the state will come in and apply that triple surface traction treatment, and then they will restripe the roads for us with using the best reflective thermoplastic paint that money can buy. They'll put up all new road safety signs, guardrail improvements, and also new reflectors. And so that's a 100% grant that's going to be worth about $600,000 to us. The other thing that we're doing is we have teamed up with an engineering company that specializes in road improvement and road engineering. We've contracted with them to do an assessment on every road in our county. Because we've got close to 800 miles of roads in our county. I don't have the expertise, knowledge, or the time, or I don't think y'all want me spending my time going and assessing these roads when I'm not trained to do so. But they will take and use a grading system that was generated and perfected by the state of Georgia, where they actually send out an engineer that goes through every road, and he does an assessment on multiple categories of that road and comes up with a grade just like you're in school, and scores, gives us a grade score of that road, takes photographs of it, they look at all the culverts, they look at all the bridges, everything is totally assessed on every road. They're logging that into a computer database as they go. We get an update every week, and we can see on a colored map what roads they have done and what percentage of completion they are. So they're up over 80% completed on this process. And one good thing about this, our LMIG money that we get every year is based off of our road miles. Well, by doing this assessment / inventory, they are finding county roads that are not on the inventory with the state. So we're going to show more miles of roads being added, which will get us more funding in the next cycle that has to be turned in by January of 2019. So getting this assessment done, we've got real county roads that we've had for years that never made it to the state database. So this is going to give us that inventory and database to help us take an engineer approach and a mathematical approach of what roads we start working on next. We're going to look at the severity of the road, the utilities under the road. We'll also be looking at the traffic, any intersections. We've had a couple of roads that we've been pulling the 911 data on as far as wrecks to see if we've got roads that need roundabouts or red lights and things. So we've got a lot of work going on behind the scenes to pull all this information together, so we start making these decisions about our infrastructure from roads and bridges based off of data and facts, and putting this stuff all in the GIS system to see how this thing all maps out, instead of what's taken place unfortunately in the recent past, where roads a lot of times were worked on based off of who lived on the road or who screamed the loudest. So sometimes a road would get paved because somebody's calling up and nagging every week. Well, we got to make that go away. Well, just pave the road. But it may not be the worst road, or the most traveled road, or the most dangerous road. And so we're going to take things and start basing these decisions based off of facts. And we'll have a big old monster book, and we'll also be on our database too, where when somebody brings up a road, we can flip to the sheet, We got all the full assessment on it. What I have challenged the engineering firm, in round numbers, that whole assessment process is costing us about $100,000. And we're able to pay that out of our T-Splosh money, so it's not coming out of your property taxes, it's coming out of this sales tax T-Splosh money. Folks, that's a lot of money, and that was a very serious thought process in making sure we were doing the right thing to do this assessment. So we just spent $100,000. But I told them, guys, you've got, over this 5-year cycle, you got to turn that expense into an investment. And the way you guys are going to do that is to help us get in position to apply for additional grants through the state and through the federal. The Trump administration keeps talking about releasing more funding for infrastructure. All your federal grants are all based off of being ready, having data, having information, and being able to meet the requirements and being ready to go. We are getting this county in position to do that. Otherwise, if a federal grant opportunity comes out and they say, oh, you know, there's X number of $1 million available, before it's like, okay, where do we start? Well, I'm just thinking about this road over here. Well, no, maybe this one over here. Well, what's that lady that's calling every week? Maybe we'll get her road done. You know, there's no real system of doing this. We want to have this a systematic approach. So it costs right now about $100,000 to resurface a center line mile. So when we talk center line miles, that's both sides of the road. That's down the center, 1 mile to resurface both sides if you don't have to do any shoulder work or any base work, $100,000. So if over 5 years, if they can get us 1 mile of road of grant money, they have taken that from the expense column over into the investment column, and we will get 100% return on that investment in the first mile of road. So I think our odds on our investment are very good that over a 5-year period, they'll get us at least 1 mile. They're probably going to get us multiple miles. So due to some early results of the assessment, we had a deadline we had to hit, they have already applied for a federal grant, and the federal dollars are available now. So we should know something back in the next few weeks, how we rated and how we stacked up. But it's money, it's federal money that has to be spent over all 50 states. And a lot of it was focusing on rural communities. So we've got a pretty good shot at it. But it's one of these things, every grant you do, you learn something. You know, you find out who won, who didn't, why, what the projects were and the needs were. And so we'll refine this process even more. We've got another state grant opportunity we was talking about last week. And so we're going to apply for grants that this county's never stepped up to the plate to apply for because they never were ready and never had assembled the right team and the right consulting group to push that over the finish line. Because when you get in these grants, I mean, some of these applications, I mean, it takes an engineer just to fill out the application. And so we have a very highly motivated group that's working with us. They want to help us. They want to be at that meeting where we say, hey, these folks right here took that expense and turned it into an investment, because they want that on their reference sheet. They want that letter of recommendation to help them grow their business. So they're highly motivated with us right now. So I know that's a long answer, but our road and bridge infrastructure is a big deal. The state's working with us on some bridge replacements. You'll start seeing probably some bridge work before the end of next year on some bridge complete replacements on some of our rural bridges. We've got about 5 bridges that the school buses are not allowed to cross. It does not meet the state standards for a school bus. You know, and here we are in 2018, folks. That's pretty sad in a modern society when you've got bridges that your school kids can't even cross over. And that just doesn't happen overnight. You can see that coming. All right, who's next? Yes, sir.
I've got several questions, but 3 of them I'd like to ask at this time.
Okay.
What you read there was posted on the website, on the Walker County .gov website, and it's a notice of property tax increase. One of my questions is, you read the 4th paragraph down about the increase in unincorporated, incorporated. But you mentioned rollback money. I don't understand what is that term? You know, what is that term and how does it affect my property tax?
Okay, great question. If you will look on the 5-year history, do you have a copy of this 5-year history?
Yes.
Okay. If you will look down that left column where it says unincorporated and bold at the top, you go down that first section and there's a blank line, and then it says gross M&O mills, and then it says less millage rate rollback. Do you see that line?
Yes, sir.
All right, if you go all the way over to 2017, you will see that number is 5.858. And then on 2018, it's 6.128. And so that's increased the rollback amount, which allowed us to keep the net, which is right under it, the same to that 9.838. Because we had increased sales tax, local option sales tax, which is great, and we had increased credit come in, or dollars come in on the insurance premium tax credit due to that franchise fee. And so the more sales tax you have, the more insurance tax credits you have, the more it will offset your property taxes. So like in Catoosa County, they have a lot of sales tax. Well, kind of the rub over there right now, I'm being told, is that they've got so much sales tax dollars coming in that the rollback should have offset even more so, some people think, to even lower their taxes even more. So what this is allowing us to do on the unincorporated is to allow us to take that growth without having to put it onto the property tax owners. It's offset by the sales tax and the insurance tax credit to allow us to take that net rate of 9.838 and leave it the same. But if you look down a little bit on the incorporated, it is incorporated, so there should be a rollback there, right? Okay, so further down toward the bottom of the page, it's only 2.636. So it's an increase over last year, but it took us up, a few basis points over the prior year. So again, it's a very complicated system, and you can change it by 100th, and it changes tens of thousands of dollars. So that's why I have to leave it to these experts to figure all that out and present this, and then the state takes all this and looks at it and does all the calculations and makes sure it's right. And then once we adopt this tonight at the 6 o'clock meeting, there's a couple of additional documents that's in the agenda packet that people will see online or see tonight that I have to sign as the commissioner, and then those have to go, I think the assessors gets a copy of those, and then the tax commissioner gets a copy of those, and then the tax commissioner, she physically has to take those documents and drive to Atlanta at the Department of Revenue and have all of this examined, the digest, all their additional documentation, everything that we've done, all the way down to the ad in the paper, the 5-year history, all of that information gets examined by the State Department of Revenue to make sure there's full compliance.
They actually take a ruler out and measure that advertising.
Yeah, they measure the advertising to make sure it's the exact column inches and everything. As an example, and Terry could probably speak in more detail, but it was 2 years ago, because you have to have all your dates and times, the school board made just a clerical error. It was very innocent, and they were off by 2 days or something. And just by the advertising of the public meetings and off and getting the calendar the way they counted, it's just a clerical little innocent area of a couple of days. And I don't even think it's having an increase or anything to amount to anything. They made them hit the reset button and re-advertise everything, start the clock over.
And it's weeks of advertising,
Yeah,
started all over again.
yeah. So it delayed getting everything to the state and getting the bills out, and I mean, so it's a very tedious process. And Greg and Terry and Joe all work in concert and double check each other's work, and then Carolyn, our tax commissioner, she looks over everything, trying to make sure we don't have any just simple little errors. As I mentioned earlier, Dade County got caught up too. Their ad size was off a few inches, and you know, they had to go get a special waiver, and they wasn't sure they was gonna get it. So, but you know, it brings accountability and transparency, which is a good thing. I mean, I support the transparency and accountability. It's just they could simplify it where the common person that doesn't do this every day could look at it and go, okay, that makes sense to me. I can see the number went up or down and how it's gonna affect me. Because then, you know, just like another thing, when your assessed value, let's say that an assessment's $100,000, well then they take 40% of that. I mean, how did the state pick 40%? Why is it not 100% you just lower the rate? Or why wasn't it 50%? I mean, so things like that, to me, it seems to be maybe an outdated system.
Some states are 100%, some are like that, 50%.
Okay.
And then there's quite a few of them that are at 40%. It's to me personally, it's just a way of confusing the public.
Yeah.
And
I've often wondered that from a state level, because this is all mandated by them, if they really don't want the local people to truly understand and know. Because if they can take something as simple as sales tax and say, folks, it's what you buy times the percentage, and you're done. Why can't they do property taxes that way? Why can't they just say, here's your value, times it by this rate, you're done? They go through this convoluted rolling back and acronyms and.
I agree, you know, that maybe that's a lot of the point, is to keep the public so confused, they just say, oh, fool you on it, and not look into it, not study it, not figure it out, and just pay it, you know. But I'm personally taxed out. You know, and I understand where you had, you know, we've had to have the increases, but, you know, I'm taxed out.
Yeah,
And
we all are, absolutely.
my second question is, and there again, I've looked at this for maybe this, I read it before I left the house, and you know, I'm confused on why the first paragraph says, right at the first, that the commissioner has tentatively adopted a millage rate which will require an increase in property taxes of 0.11% in the unincorporated area and 1.35% in the incorporated areas.
That's the percentage that the revenue went up. That's not the percentage that the rate went up. That's the percentage that the income revenue at the bottom line went up, right?
the new construction and, you know, increasing inventories, whatever the case may be, the way they word it is you're taking advantage of that part of it, not what's already set out there. So when he says there's no increase on you, but, you know, someone's built a house, they're not gonna be paying more. That wasn't accounted for beforehand, and now it is, but the way that it looks, it's like he's taking advantage of that. It's not really, it's just.
So the
they can
county's
add
getting
in.
more money because there was growth, because that new house got built, like
Yeah,
you
the
say.
growth's the key word there.
So the
anyway.
growth in the unincorporated was 0.11% of new dollars coming into the system. So when you look down on the 5-year history at the very second line from the bottom, where it says $264,505. Well, actually, go back up to the unincorporated area, where it says, well, we try to do the math. Well, you'd have to take the net taxes levied from 2007, which was $8,761,869, and do the math between that and the $8,858,930, and that's the growth. That's that 0.11. That's how much we grew in taxes over the prior year.
Clear as mud.
It is. I tell you, I have to sit down with Greg, I mean, several times throughout the year through this process, say, all right, Greg, go over this with me again. I've sat down in Terry's office, all right, Terry, let's talk about this.
We've had a lot of growth. You can see that in the numbers there. But then if you look a little bit further, like motor vehicles in the unincorporated went from $41 million down to 32. You know, and that's because of that TABT thing that come along. You no longer receiving ad valorem taxes on those motor vehicles.
It's dropping
So-
every year.
so
It was
that's-
107,000 in 2013.
So that's happening every year, and then you
107
look at the exemptions on that side, less M&O exemptions. You can see down in the incorporated area that those exemptions, let's see, where's my line? Last year were $46 million, and now they're $52 million. That's a negative. You have to take that out of that. Now, the exemptions have increased, you know, that's the homestead exemptions, elderly homestead exemptions, people coming into the county, signing up for those exemptions.
Agriculture?
Military, all that stuff is now taking more away. Now, in the meantime, the county operations still have to happen, just like normal. They still have to have that money, but this stuff's being reduced, and for, unfortunately, in some cases, they may have to raise it to level that out, so.
Yeah, that's a great point, especially when you see it, the biggest is on the motor vehicles. In 2013, the second line down there, it's $107,883,000 in vehicles that were taxed an ad valorem, or they called it the birthday tax, where when you renewed your tag every year, you had to pay a tax on it. In 2018, that's down to $32,972,930. So it's dropped 75% of the taxable value of vehicles. So what happens, like Terry's explaining, if you don't have some growth to offset that, you need the same amount of money to operate on. The only way you can get it is you've got to start moving the millage rate in order to maintain where you are. And so when people sign up, you know, and I know people, it's in the tax code, and this is what they get to. But when they go and sign up for these exemptions at age 70 and age 75, to be real and candid with ourselves, let's just say that it saves them $1,000 a year. Well, that $1,000 gets spread amongst everybody else to have to pay. That burden gets reallocated. I had a caller call in last night and said, well, I have the authority as the commissioner to pass an ordinance that would say anyone that's 100% disabled wouldn't have to pay any property taxes or pay a certain percentage or a discount or whatever. And that there's 2% of the people in Walker County that are 100% declared disabled. Well, that all sounds good. Oh, well, we're helping a class of people. But then everybody else in the county, in the room, has got to carry and pick up the piece of that load. So you're redistributing. So to me, I have several issues with that from a governing standpoint. Number one, that gets you closer and closer to socialism, the more special classes that you create to try to equalize everything out. Number two, I don't want to lower the taxes for any particular class. I want to be able to roll the taxes back for everybody. I'm supposed to be the commissioner representing everyone, not a special class of some sort or another. So it's just like, say, the Erlanger fee. That would be to say, okay, well, if you're 100% disabled or whatever, then you don't pay this Erlanger fee. But everybody else has got to pay it. Well, that's giving somebody an exemption based off of a class. And so that's why the Erlanger fee, public health fee, there's no exemptions at all. There's no exclusion. Everybody pays it across the board. Even somebody that has exempted out on the other age things, everybody pays the Erlanger fee. Everybody that is part of the Walker County Emergency Services pays that emergency service fee. And there's no exemptions. And that way you can keep the rate lower because you're spreading that across everybody and you're not exempting people out and creating these special classes. Now, I can stand here and build an argument for that and debate that all day, and I'm sure 5 other people could step up and debate why it should be, those exemptions should be there. It's just an issue that I have the way I think government is set up. So instead of them going to the federal government and saying, increase my benefits because I'm disabled, give me more money so I can pay my taxes, They want to shift that local burden to local government just to exempt it so they don't have to try to get Congress. It's easier to get to me than it is to Congress in Washington to get them to raise their Social Security disability benefits or whatever. And so got the same thing with the water authority. We've had to raise the water rates because of infrastructure problems. People are coming in and saying, a couple of people says, well, you ought to give an exemption for somebody that's over the age of 70. So that's like saying, let's just say this is a cup of water. Let's just say it's $1. Okay, if you're 71, then you pay 75 cents for it. Everybody else has got to pay $1. To me, that's creating a social class. When it takes the same amount of money to get that cup of water across the board. And they say, well, there's a lot of people in our county that are struggling, and absolutely so. Do it by income. I said, okay, what's the magic number? Somebody said, oh, well, somebody's making $20,000 a year or less. They ought to get a discount on their water bill. All right, the first thing that's going to happen is grandma's going to walk in the door. She's going to have all of her paperwork, her tax returns for the last 10 years. She's going to say, I made $20,050. I'm $50 over. Well, maybe we can make an exception for you because it's $50 over a year. We're going to go ahead and give you the exclusion. And she goes home, gets on the phone, calls her neighbor, and well, hers was $20,100. Okay? You know, where does it stop? Exactly. You see where I'm going. Where does it stop? And then you might have somebody making $30,000 a year. They got 5 kids. Their income level is really less than the person single and making 20. If they've got 6 mouths to feed and they're making 30. So where do you do that? And that's part of what has complicated our federal tax system so much, is because they create all of these special exclusions and all these things, and that cost has got to be pushed out to everybody else. And so to me, the fairest tax we have is sales tax, because it's a consumption tax. People have asked me, why don't you just take to solve the problem, instead of monkeying with property taxes, take sales tax 10%. Sign me up. I would be for that in a second. But by state law, I don't have the authority to do that. They go, oh, but you're the sole commissioner. State law says I can't do that. We can only raise sales tax based off of the guidelines that the state has, and right now we're at the max, is 8%. Our local government and our school systems and all have implemented every sales tax possible. But it would make a lot more sense for our community and for our people, the more things that are taxed based off of consumption instead of based off of a property value or exemptions and who pays and who doesn't pay. So when you walk up to the counter and you spend $1, everybody's taxed the same. I think that's Shannon's way that I think government ought to be, and I'm sure we could get in a debate and everybody could blow that apart. Some's going to agree and disagree, but that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you, but my last
Okay,
question,
sure.
at this time anyway,
Sure.
is you mentioned the money for the sheriff's department. A few months ago, the sheriff came up with some, I think it was roughly $270,000. And anyway, that went to buy, I think, new police cars, 10 or 11 cars. And now have you budgeted for this next year some more money to buy more cars? Is that where this other?
Yes.
There's going to be like roughly 20 new cars out there.
Yes.
Okay.
They need about 14 new cars a year, so we're getting closer. Hopefully next year we'll have enough existing revenue to add one more or so each year. But yes, they had money in an account that the sheriff controls that is commissions off of the commissary sales. There's a third-party vendor that manages the commissaries for the jail, and that includes snack items and things that they buy. It includes use of the internet, use of the phone, all these types of services that they pay through the commissary. So these third parties pay that commission back to the sheriff. Well, the sheriff has that in an account that he manages, and he had been saving that money up. So some people say, well, how did the sheriff get all that money? You know, where all that come from? Well, he could document where it come from, and people got kind of rattled about it at first, a few people, and I said, well, hey, I'm just glad he still got it. You know, at least he didn't go and blow it, because if it's anything to do with the jail, by state law, he has the authority to spend that money. Like if he needs to buy new mattresses or buy inmate clothes, or, you know, there's a list of things that he can direct that money to. But to use it for any other purpose, it has to be turned over to the governing authority, which is the commissioner's office. And so when we had our annex courthouse under construction due to that building collapse, and we were trying to find money, I was asking everybody, hey, you got any money? You got access to money? You got any grants or anything? We were kind of what I call the old Baptist way, we was passing the play. It's trying to find everything we could to help offset that cost. And he said, well, let me look into something. So he got to looking at the state law, and he come to me, he said, hey, let's talk. He said, I've got some money we can use. And he said, you know, if we can work this together, he said, we can take 100,000 of this to finish the courtroom. We'll take the other, what was it, 240 or something like that, if you'll buy the patrol cars. So technically, if he could have just turned that money over, and I could have put it anywhere that I wanted it to go. But since he was coming forward and he needed those cars, and it was very obvious that they needed it, and he was willing to use part of it toward the courthouse, it made sense. Let's work together to solve the problems of our community. And one of those problems is getting police cars without going into debt, finishing our courthouse without going into debt. At the end of the day, the citizens win. And so we got that for that first batch that come in, and then with the reduction of the lease payment that's gone away now, that we paid off this year, and increasing the budget, I think about $274,000, he's taking that money and using some of that to be able to purchase more cars going forward. So we have officially broke that cycle of financing police cars in this administration. Because it's just a horrible, horrible way to buy police cars when you gotta finance it. Good questions. Yes, sir.
Been here before.
Absolutely. You're one of our regulars, that's good.
Well, I understand about paying the bills and whatever adjustments you've got to make for rollbacks or whatever the case may be that's forced you to advertise and have these meetings.
That's right.
And you brought to light something that I had never thought about before and had no reason to think about it. But I can't understand why in the incorporated area, the millage rate is higher when I get services from that incorporated area and they tax me for those services. The fire and the police and the garbage pickup and other things is that the city's charging me for, and plus the cost of the council and whatever that might be, and the office people and whatever. And yet the county has to tax me at a higher rate than the unincorporated property. I don't grasp that.
I can point it out on here and show you, when you look at the gross millage rate, so in that second section, first line item says gross M&O millage. If you look at 2018, it's 15.966. If you drop down to the very last section where it says gross millage rate under the incorporated, it says 15.966. Under each one of those is where it starts into the millage rollback. So in the unincorporated, our rollback is 6.128. But in the incorporated, in the cities, it's only 2.636. So that's where they get a share of that sales tax money. They get a share of the insurance premium tax credit money. So we can only roll back that portion for the county residents and property owners. The cities have to take their portion and roll it back for the city taxes. So if you look on the city digest, you will see a rollback column on your city 5-year histories as well.
I appreciate that answer, but I still don't understand.
I'm with you. I mean,
understand how,
it's confusing.
why does this county even have an incorporated and unincorporated tax rate? I don't understand that.
Well, the gross rate is identical. It's the rollbacks are different. If either one of y'all got a better way of maybe simplifying it for everybody?
Well, the whole issue is just the insurance premium tax, that's the whole difference. And the county can only roll theirs back inside the unincorporated area. If they can't roll it back within the city, so that's the difference between the two. The incorporated, they get their
Well,
own,
let's say there was no insurance rollbacks, there was no
no insurance
tax
premium be equal.
collected, period.
But no insurance premium be equal.
Say what?
It'd be equal if there's no insurance premium credit.
There would be no incorporated and unincorporated
No
tax rates
difference.
in the county.
Be no difference. It would be the same rate.
It'd be
Your
the
net number would
15,900.
end up being the same.
The 15,966 would be the same for both of them. The
But-
rollbacks offset that. But
But-
they're different because the city collects, they take in the insurance premium, which is part of that rollback, where they don't on that sales tax though, so. County gets that, so they're able to roll back some of it in the cities, but, they're able to roll back more in the county itself.
And this is standard operating procedure. I mean, this is the way.
It's not standard to charge you twice for the services you get.
Well, but if you look, as one example, just even walking, if you look on the 5-year history, this has been going on
Absolutely.
every year.
That's why I don't understand it.
The only way legally that we could not have one of these meetings, it really comes down to our total tax dollar revenue at the bottom line. If we were bringing in the same dollar amount,
Actually, both, has to be the same in both unincorporated and.
oh, okay, for both incorporated
Both.
and unincorporated, if we were bringing in less taxes, then we wouldn't have to have a meeting. So that's why you see last year, in 2016, in order to make that to work, where they could throw the billboards up and say, roll back, no tax increases, and do that both for the incorporated and unincorporated both, they had to lower their overall income over $500,000. But they're up to here trying to pay the bills, but they rolled the taxes back so they wouldn't have to have a public meeting and go through that process instead of doing the right thing and keeping the revenue the same to take care of the ongoing services that needed to be provided. Instead, things were being neglected, like maintaining the roads.
Well, I'm still trying to understand, is there a difference in the rollback because there's more parcels in the county than there are in the city?
No, it's dollars. There's more insurance dollars coming in.
That's because of the parcels and the insurance policies that's
Yes.
issued.
Yes,
There's
you're
not-
right.
There's not as many issued policies in the cities as there are in the counties.
In our situation, that's correct, but that probably doesn't hold true across the state. But in our county, in our cities, because we have such a big unincorporated area, I would say that would be correct.
Well, it makes consolidated government look good to me. But another question I
thought.
had,
And some areas have done that even recently.
well,
They've
Jacksonville,
consolidated.
Florida's been that way for 30 years.
Macon-Bibb County has recently done that.
Well,
They've
I think
consolidated.
Marietta was that way many 20 years ago.
You've got Athens-Clarke County has consolidated government.
You're not gonna get it here, though.
Considered it recently.
Pardon?
Dalton and Whitfield were considering it, but I think they backed.
So there's it's becoming more of a trend, I should say, I guess, in St. George.
We have two things to stop them in Walker. Lookout Fountain and Chickamauga. We'll stop that. But anyway, another question, and you may not be able to answer this, and I understand if you can't, but you're the only person I know to ask this question.
Okay.
And it just came to me when you were speaking a while ago. What year, when you were speaking of the professor and hasn't seen a negative balance sheet or whatever for a
Net
county?
position.
Yeah, well, have you been able to ascertain when the county went negative?
I would have to look back at the audits, and they are online. Do you know right off when the net position
Goes
went
way
negative?
back,
Goes back sometime?
way back, yeah.
About 10 years, 15
For probably
years?
about 7 years, probably.
7 years,
I'm guessing that probably about 7.
kind of a recent thing.
Not a recent one at all, no.
So, yeah, it was because what was happening before, I mean, y'all see how many people's here today? We had maybe just a few more of this at the first hearing, and some of them was there just because of the general meeting. We probably won't have more than this at the next meeting, out of 68,000 people. Well, the prior administration figured out, if they didn't raise your taxes and bother you, or what I refer to as wake you up, then out of sight, out of mind. They hold their public meetings at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when typically the courthouse is busy, there's limited parking, limited seating, school's getting out. They did all of these things. They didn't put everything online, on the website, on Facebook, video all the meetings. They didn't do all these things because they didn't want you informed. They didn't want you engaged because they didn't want to wake any of us up. And I'm just as guilty. Okay, you can put me at the front of the line as far as being guilty. I didn't pay attention much either. And so when I started hearing rumbles and I started hearing vendors not being paid, I had to do an open records request to get the financial audit. And it took a couple of weeks to get it. Well, now we've put every one of those on the website in a PDF format all the way back to 1996. Because that should be available. The one that we just completed for last year is online, has been for a couple of months. So people can see that and look and know where county government is. And so they did all these little small things subtly, so nobody's really watching or paying attention, and only just a very few people get involved, and nobody's flying the flag saying everybody get involved, get woke up. So I enjoy these public meetings. I enjoy getting to meet people like y'all that I don't think I've met before, to get people more involved, as we were talking in the lobby earlier, to keep this stuff from happening again. And one of my objectives and goals has been as commissioner is to try to set a new precedence that agendas are out 24 hours in advance like they're supposed to be. The entire agenda packet is put on the Facebook and on the website in its entirety. The minutes from the prior meeting are at the very next meeting every time. All of these basic things that are in the law to be done that was not being done. To video all the meetings, put them on our YouTube channel. There's 63 videos I looked Saturday on our YouTube channel of prior meetings that we've had over the last 20 months. To do all these things, to raise the bar, to raise the standard, because I won't always be the commissioner, but I don't want my kids to be going through the same thing again if everybody will see how we're doing things. I mean, we had departments like the landfill and Mountain Cove Farms that didn't even have a budget. It just didn't exist. They never even went through the process. We're saying every department, every entity is going to have a budget where they would release 2 or 3 pages of a summarized budget that was laughable. We released 100 pages. So whenever I'm not the commissioner anymore, I want somebody to say, wait a minute, don't go back to those days where the budget's on 2 pages. If the Whitfield administration can release 100 pages, we want to see something really similar to that. We want to see the details. And so we've got to learn from the past, make these changes, set the new precedents, the new standards to keep us from going backwards, and have a mindset, we got to stay out of debt. Now, fortunately, other than having to do these TANs, we've not had to do any bonding, any other borrowing, any leases, anything like that. And we continue to work this debt down. Greg did a sheet for me the other day that we took to the banks because the 2016 audit showed we were just a few $1,000s short of being $70 million in debt. Well, we're now under $52 million of total liability from the 2016 audit. And that has been done by paying the payments on time and not creating any new debt. And working that down systematically.
Seems like we've been into a tailspin about the time that crematory.
Well, and then
We didn't have the
2008,
money.
2009 economy downturns, unemployment went up. A lot of the assessment values went down. This doesn't show that era of time, but if we went back and looked at the digest, we would probably could follow the dip in the economy. There's some too. And some of it, I think we got to blame ourselves. When they started the rumblings of talking about buying a farm, we should have all went, whoa, wait a minute. What do we need with a farm? A restaurant? I mean, business people, I knew this. I sit there and just kick myself all the time. The hardest business in America to do and be successful is a restaurant. And then they tell you, when it comes to retail, the three things they tell you is location, location, location. So we're going to take the most beautiful location, but the worst location, the hardest business to make a profit in, and the most expensive way to do anything in America is to let government do it. And we're going to put all that together and we're going to do it. We should have all been turning flips down there trying to bust the door down. And I should have been somewhere toward the front of the line because I knew all this stuff. The most expensive way to do anything, and folks, I'm right here in the thick of it, but I can tell you the most expensive way is to let the government do it. We had no business in the restaurant business. I would love to be able to sell Mountain Cove Farms. I want it preserved. It's a special place. We could put covenants and restrictions on it. We don't need to be in that business. We're competing against private businesses. The restaurant, we've had a couple people try that. Our little country store down there, which basically now sells Cokes and candy bars, we had no business in the alcohol business. We should be in the taxing of alcohol, not in the sales of alcohol. So we had all these conflicting things going over, but it's just the old saying, and they do this in tests in school and stuff, you take a hot boiling pot of water, throw a frog in it, the frog will jump out. Y'all know where I'm going here. You put a normal temperature pot of water and you put the frog in it, the frog will stay in it. You just gradually turn the heat up. The frog's eventually going to die because he's never going to jump out. He gets just used to it. Gets immune to it. Well, folks, that's what happened to all of us. We just got immune and used to this is just the way things are, and none of us are looking, and they're not published in the reports, and everything's been kind of pushed aside, and we're all going just about our daily business, just trying to survive, trying to live, trying to handle things, get the kids to school, get the dinner on the table, pay the house payment, and do our own business. And they figured that out really quick. So it doesn't matter the form of government you have. It's the people in those positions of leadership. Because the thing, and I talked about this a little bit on the Judy show this morning. Some people think, well, the Board of Commissioners will solve all of our problems. I had people in December call me and say, "You've not paid my road yet. We just voted on that T-Splosh, you've not paid my road." Well, ma'am, I'm sorry, but the T-Splosh, we don't even start collecting it till April. They called me back in May. "Hey, it's May, my road's still not been paved." Because they thought you pass T-Splosh, all of our roads get magically fixed. Okay? Like our water authority. Somebody asked me, so I'll ask this question. The biggest problems we have in the county, is it the county or the water authority? It's the water authority. That's our biggest pain point right now in this county, is that water and sewer authority. As far as the infrastructure failures and the amount of money it's going to take to get it back on solid footing. And the problems that I deal with more so right now is that water authority than the county government. It's been a board since 1977. Okay? But just slowly by slowly, over the last few years, it just goes right off the cliff. So, the board didn't fix it. They didn't change anything. it all goes back to the people in those spots. So I want, the people are gonna make the decision in November if we stay with a sole form of government or we go to a board. But I just want people to realize that if the citizens vote and decide to go to the board, all these problems don't just magically get fixed. It's not that all of a sudden somebody's gonna walk in and go, hey, I got the secret formula right here. Boom, it's all done. It's not gonna happen that way. If anything, it's probably gonna get harder. It's gonna slow down. So, again, my point is there's not a perfect system. There's not a perfect magic number. Because there's some across the state, there's 3, some there's 5, there's 7, there's 9. And there's about 7 different types of county government in Georgia. None of them are perfect, including this one.
We take comments?
Sure.
Okay. I can't disagree with what you're saying, but there again, you just spoke a while ago about, you won't be the commissioner forever, no matter whether it's a sole commissioner or a board.
That's right.
More than one. And that there'll be more generations to come. Well, if the previous administration had been 5 people, the likelihood of us getting this deep into the red was a lot less likely. Because it's awfully hard to get 5 people to agree. I think you'll agree to that. That's the reason there's gonna be an odd number. There's gonna be 3 for and 2 against, or 3 against and 2 for. That's the split. And I feel like with that system, after what we're going through now, because we didn't have a better check and balance and check process in place, that we as citizens, like you were making the example of the frog, we just sat there trusting that the experience of the past person was sufficient to see that we weren't getting buried and dead. And as it turned out, I question myself now, just like you have yourself, about whether we should have spoke up sooner. But I had some dealings with the county back then, and it became obvious to me that she was, the previous administration was more than a one-person rule. And the one person that was ruling wasn't ruling. And I say the same thing about any government entity. Your legacy is not going to be determined by you. It's going to be determined by the people that you surround yourself with. Just like Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, whoever you want to mention. Their legacy is made. Obama's is by the people they surrounded themselves with, the people that they got advice from, and the actions they taken. And I just feel like if we don't do the 5-person commission in this cycle, it'll be a generation or 2 generations away before we'll have another opportunity to do it. And speaking in favor of you and the things you have accomplished in a short period of time and what you've laid out for the near future, which is all a plus. I'm proud of it.
Well, thank you. And I think your comments are very well spoken. I know you've thought those out very well. And there's a good number of people that feel just like you do. But if you take that concept of a board and take that and go apply that to our water and sewer authority, we had 5 people, and it's in a mess. When our water filter plant doesn't even exist, it's basically a broken shell. We got filter trailers over there filtering 1 million gallons a day each. We had 106 million gallons of infiltration into the sewer system. That Moccasin Bend went from charging us $60,000 a month to $250,000 a month. If we hadn't have done this last rate increase by January of 2019, our general fund would be at 0. There'd been a board there since 1977 when it was created. They had 5 people there. since 1977 that have rotated in, different boards, different leadership. So I think what I want people to understand is, yeah, if you'd had the right 5 people there, you could have had great success. If you have the right sole commissioner, you can have great success. If you have 3 people, you can have great success. The success is not in the structure. The success is in the people serving. And that's what the citizens have got to keep the checks and balances on. Because that's what concerns me, is the people that I hear from that say, we get a board, we'll be, these problems are gonna go away. And I just wanna reach over and shake them and say, no, don't go back to sleep. Even if there's a board, and even if I run again, and even if I'm one of the members or I'm the chairman, don't think it's fixed. You better stay engaged. You better hold us accountable. When we were doing budget meetings last year, one of the last meetings, a guy who I know well spoke up and he said, why should we trust you? Very absurdly, why should we trust you, Commissioner? My immediate answer was, don't. Don't trust me. Make me prove it, make me earn it. Don't trust me until I prove it. Don't just take it for granted. And that's what scares me when people are thinking about this process of a board or not, and I can't say it enough, is they think, okay, we get a board, whoever runs, we're good, now let's go back to putting our blinders on, and let's go back to our daily lives, and let's go back to having a bunch of empty seats. Problem solved. A board can get us in just as big a mess as a sole commissioner can. So the numbers, my point is the numbers are irrelevant. It's the accountability and the transparency. And if you've got a sole commissioner or a board that's good on the transparency and it can work and assemble a team, because the team is not just internal to my office or my department. The team is county-wide. It's all the elected officials. It's everybody that's got to be on the same team. So you get a sole commissioner that argues all the time with the other constitutional officers, or a board that argues 2 or 3 of them all the time with the constitutional officers, you're going to end up back with this. So people just need to stay engaged, hold government accountable at all levels, even the cities. I bet you go to some of these city council meetings. I know I served on the city council in Chickamauga for 2 years. We'd have meetings, there wouldn't be nobody there other than the staff and the city council members. There wouldn't be nobody there. And you get a zoning issue or something like that, you might get a dozen people or show up. But most people, like I say, and I'm guilty, and I sit up here and talk about this stuff, just due to my schedule. I've not been back to a city council meeting in Chickamauga since I come off the council, and I still live in the city. I should be more engaged in my own city, keeping up with what's going on and holding them accountable as well.
Well, I have a little history in the water company, and you may know it already, but whether, if you do, you just shut me up. But in the 60s, there was a Fairview water system and a Chattanooga Valley water system. And water lines and sewer lines was planned and mapped out and contracted and went busted. Well, that put Flintstone in such bad financial shape, the county decided, whoever in the county, which was probably a lone commissioner at the time, because they appointed the managers of those systems. There was not a board on those systems, it was just a manager in each one of them. Well, to get the Flintstone pulled out of the red, they merged it, which you just spoke of in 1977, and created the one entity. And still, even though they created a board to do that, those board members weren't picked by the electorate. They were picked by the commissioner, if I'm not mistaken.
And still on.
So really, you're still down to a one-person control on that board, basically. I mean, you've got 5 different opinions when you go to a board meeting of the Water County the water and sewer, Walker County Water and Sewer Authority, whatever they call itself, but, so, I don't see that that's a very good example, to be frank with you, but.
Okay, and I see your point. What you're basically saying is that if the board members are picked by the commissioner, that the commissioner is gonna have influence over the board's votes. And I could see, that's probably happened over the time. The way the structure is the chairman doesn't vote unless there is a tie. And so I've been on there 20 months, I've yet to even cast the first vote on the water authority. Because as the chairman, the way that structure is, by the Enabling Act, the chairman doesn't vote unless there's a tie. So to bring it back a little closer to home, let's talk about Walker County. Walker County's not always been a sole commission. Back in the 30s and early 40s, it was a board of commissioners in Walker County. And we probably need to get to the library and pull this history out, if nothing else, make it informative for our citizens, put it on the website so people can read about the history. But the citizens of Walker County voted to go to a sole commissioner from a board. And why do you think they voted to do that?
Corruption, I guess.
Pardon?
Corruption, most likely. I mean, that's not a kind word, but, and I'm sure there's a more diplomatic word to use, but that's the only one that comes to mind.
What I read in a history article was that Walker County was broke. It was financially broke to the point that the county employees that were working were literally given IOU vouchers because the county was broke. And so the board was abolished and a sole commission government was put in because they said it's going to be more effective, they can move quicker, they can get things done, and we got one person to hold accountable because this board just broke our county. And it was a 5-member board in Walker County. In the turn of the century, and the county was broke. So that goes to strengthen the thing I keep saying over and over, is it doesn't matter the structure. You can be broke with either one. You can be successful with either one. Let's take it that way. You can be successful with either one. What I've done is I have focused on the problems and chipping away at it, putting the right team, putting the right people in place, building the team, building the alliances, getting everybody pulling in the right direction, doing the right thing, and not even focusing or having to think about what the election cycle is going to be, if I would even run again at that time, or if it's a board or sole commission or whatever. That was so far out, it was irrelevant because I got bills on the desk and issues and problems and air conditions out and all these other things going on that's so far out. The reason I bring it up now, it was on my mind because there was some telephone calls this morning on the Judy show I was on, and it's coming up on that time. And so I have had people ask me, okay, Whitfield, what are you going to do? If we keep it as a sole commission, are you going to run? If we do a board, are you going to run? And so for a long time, I wouldn't give anybody an answer. But a few weeks ago, I finally decided to tell people the way I felt. And I feel like that I'm here to serve the citizens. And I'm here to see this through. I feel like I'm being called to do this. And I will serve in whatever capacity the citizens want me to serve, as long as the citizens still want me to serve. In whatever form of government. So it's not my decision, it's the citizens' decision. I just want the citizens to think about the decision and not be of a mindset that if we leave it one way or we change it, everything is solved in either capacity. We still got a few hard years ahead of us regardless. That's my message. I'll serve in whatever capacity at the pleasure of the citizens. When I start hearing the rumbles, hey, we got to get him out, you won't have to worry about me running again to get beat. I just won't run.
Well, can I ask you a direct question?
Sure.
If I'm understanding what you just said, if we the county electorate decides on a board of commissioners in 2018, then you will, with some encouragement or not encouragement, whichever the case may be, you would still be a candidate in 2020.
I'm saying that I'll serve at the will of the people, and we still got over 2 years to go and a lot of hills to climb. And I think in 2 years, the citizens are gonna say, Whitfield's done a great job, or the citizens are gonna be rumbling, it's time for him to go.
That's not gonna happen.
So I stay focused on doing the right thing. And as long as I can go home every day and feel like that I have done the right thing that's in the best interest for the citizens in this community and going forward, I don't have a problem making those tough decisions. And if it means not being electable, as some would say, I'm okay with that. I feel like that I have done my mission. I've done what I've been called to do. And as long as I'm staying focused and doing what I'm called to do, if the mission ends, the mission ends.
Well, I can only speak for myself. If it took us 7 years or maybe a little more to get in this negative position, we're not gonna get out of it in four years. I don't see that happening. It's gonna get close. So.
It's gonna get better every year, you're right.
That's right.
And so-
and it'll only be because new blood's in there that you.
And so you're right, it's not gonna be an easy fix, so that strengthens my message that it doesn't matter the form of government, it's still not gonna be fixed.
Well, I'd like to get on another question.
Okay.
I hate to take up all this time, but, here in 2013, under the motor vehicles, and I'm just looking at the unincorporated, incorporated somewhat the same percentages, we're rounded up $108 million, and that's what the county took in, correct? In 2013 for motor vehicles.
No, that's not revenue collected, that's assessed value.
Oh, assessed value.
All of those up there, like that right above it, 960 million for real property, that's assessed value.
Okay, you get over here at 2018, and it's roughly 33 million.
Correct. So what happened is the state changed it 4 or 5 years ago,
Yeah.
where you don't pay that birthday tax anymore, you pay a sales tax. And so as these cars go to the junkyard or become disposed of or whatever, those that have been painted ad valorem, new cars are coming in and they're charging a sales tax, and the county gets a lesser portion of that than they used to in the past. Now, the legislative body this past year at the Capitol changed that, where they're increasing the percentage share of that to local government starting in July of 2019. So starting in July 2019, I think we're gonna get 15% more, something like that, of that sales tax, or what it's called, TAVT is the acronym, collected to go back toward local government, because the state has gotten a hundreds of millions of dollar windfall that they didn't used to get. So they've sucked that revenue out of local government, which has made it harder for all the counties and all the cities across the state. And so local governments have been hammering and lobbying on that the last 2 or 3 years, and finally have raised enough attention to it that it's been so out of proportion that in July of 2019, we will get a higher percentage of that share of the sales tax of the new sales. But what's gonna happen is this number here is gonna continue to erode. So even though they're increasing it, we're losing on the other side of these vehicles that are coming off the old ad valorem birthday tax. So it's one of those things where we're going this way, we're going this way, and I don't know if how the wash is gonna be, so to speak, because we're gaining on the revenue side, but we got a drain open over here too, and we're losing.
But it'd be reasonable to say that from 13 to 18, the county has lost revenue just
Absolutely.
because ad valorem, and that's gonna cause, force the taxes to be spread out over the property as opposed to the automobiles.
You're 100% correct. And see, last year when we were trying to solve the Erlanger issue, we were looking at putting a flat tax on vehicles was one of the theories that actually I saw somebody posted it on Facebook. I'm like, hey, that's a great idea. You know, I'll borrow all the great ideas I could borrow. And we started checking to see if we could put a $5 or $10 annual debt reduction fee on the vehicles. And state told us we couldn't do it. We didn't have legal authority to do that. And so we kept, and then somebody said, well, you know, do the sales tax. And that's when I learned about the sales tax. We can't increase the sales tax more than we're already doing. And at that time, the T-Splosh was not even available to us. And so when you look at different means of local government taxing, the only thing that local government really truly has is property tax that you can really change from a local government. Because when you add a sales tax, whether it be a splosh or a loss or T-Splosh, that has to be voted on by the citizens. Local county government, the only thing they can control in the cities is that property tax number. So local government's kind of boxed in. You know, people say, well, you know, local government should get creative and think out of the box. Well, we got a little teeny tiny box. And when you've got the erosion of the vehicles, which you clearly have pointed out, and rightfully, it's a good point. And then Terry pointed out the increase of exemptions. There's two major leaks there of revenue that everybody else is having to make up the shortfall. So it's just like next year, people say, well, hey, what do you think the taxes are going to be next year? Well, if somebody could tell me what the exemptions were going to be, what the new assessments was going to be, and how much we was going to lose on the vehicle, then I could back into the number and tell you what we got to have to maintain the same level. And that's what we tried to do this year, is what we got to do to maintain the same level with all of these things in here moving on us. And also the insurance tax credit's moving, the sales tax is moving, you know, you got all these moving parts. So this is why you just work as hard as you can to try to maintain as much as you can and operate as efficiently and make sure every dollar is being spent wisely that you possibly can. And it's not that easy.
We don't mind help on the exemptions part. If you know of anybody that's receiving an exemption and they're renting out their property, they're not entitled to that.
It's on your homestead.
So we don't know those things because, you know, people don't always report that to us. So we can actually take those off, and if someone has it illegally, you know, and that sure would help us, you know, on our end to make sure everything's right. But it also, you know, it also means it's fair to you that somebody else is paying their fair share just like you are.
Right. That's the thing. It's the sales tax is the only fair tax that I've seen. You know, there's just nothing else that's really fair at any level, state, federal, local, and all. Sales tax, and that's where you've seen a lot of rumble, heard a lot of things in the past about a national sales tax. You know, it's never gone anywhere.
How did you work outside the box to get the Erlanger tax and 10% tax? How did you work outside the box to do that?
Well, in the state of Georgia, you have the ability to create a special tax district. And so by creating a special tax district, which we took the entire county, and we was able to create a fee structure. And so you can determine how that fee structure is made, but there's only about 5 or 6 different things that you can create a special tax district for by state law. Public health facility fees is one that you can do. Public safety, fire services is one you can do. Sanitation is another one you can do. Trying to think, there's just a few. Libraries, I think, is one you can do. So we took that code of the state and worked with the association's legal counsel to help us document that ordinance or resolution that we did to formulate that special tax district to go toward, that has to be earmarked funding to go toward everything that's public health facility. Just like the emergency service fee goes toward everything to do with emergency management, and those funds have to be earmarked so it cannot go into general government. So we don't have the authority to say, well, we want to create just an extra fee just to go into the general fund. There's not a statute that supports that. And so, too, those special fees have to be earmarked as designated funds and handled from an accounting standpoint that way. And you can do smaller districts, do a special tax district, just as one example, the golf course community that's now called Macklemore. They're talking about that residential area doing a special tax district to fund some infrastructure, something that they may be coming to us in the near future asking for, to create a special tax district. So it's very limited.
Well, that explains why for the hospital payback, so to speak, fees, there's no exemptions.
Correct.
For your ages and what have you.
Correct. Yeah, no homestead exemptions, no age exemptions, no agriculture conservation exemptions, no exemptions, and the old fire fee, or it's now the public, what do we call it? Public safety fee, thank you. There's no exemptions on it either. But there's been legislation the last couple of years, and I understand it's gonna be back on the docket this year, to take that option away from local governments where you can't do a special tax district. And so I lobbied against that last year, saying, hey, y'all understand how this is going to affect a lot of counties. If you can't create these special districts, then what happens, let's just say they come up and say, you gotta do away with it. Now we gotta take and roll our fire services, emergency management into the millage rate. Then it applies to all the exemptions. And so then you got some people that's paying 10 cents a square foot. If they're exempt, now they go to zero, but they still want those services provided. The rest of us have got to pick up the difference. So what would happen is the taxpayer would end up seeing their taxes go up because it's shared and you've got special classes that are being exempt. Are we having fun yet? But I appreciate y'all's time today. I hope this has been helpful in education. Please stay involved. Please continue to come to the public meetings. Please stay engaged, ask questions, hold us accountable. We welcome that. If you're not able to make the meetings, we do take all of our public meetings and put them on our YouTube channel. You can link off of that, off of the website, or you can go to YouTube and just search in the search bar Walker County Commissioner. All those will come up and you can watch those at your pleasure. And then all of the documentation is on the website to support those meetings. So thank you. It's been a great meeting and I hope you found it very helpful.